going to read from the Bible now, and we'll jump into Isaiah, and this is chapter 36 and 37. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and Judah. And the king of Assyria sent the Rabbikesh from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem with a great army. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. And there came out to him Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder. And Rabshakeh said to them, "Say to Hezekiah, thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, on what do you rest this trust of yours? Do you think that mere words are strategy and power for war? In whom do you trust, that you have rebelled against me? Behold, you are trusting in Egypt, that broken reed of a staff, which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who trust in him. But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and to Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar? Come now, make a wager with my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses, if you are able on your part to set riders on them. How then can you repulse a single captain among the least of my master's servants, when you trust in Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Moreover, is it without the Lord that I have come up against this land to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it." Then Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah said to Rabshakeh, "Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in the language of Judah, within the hearing of the people who are on the wall." But the Rabshakeh said, "Has my master sent me to speak these words to your master and to you, and not to the men sitting on the wall, who are doomed with you to eat their own dung and drink their own urine?" Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in a loud voice in the language of Judah, "Hear the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you. Do not let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, by saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me and come out to me. Then each one of you will eat of his own vine, and each one of his own fig tree, and each one of you will drink the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware, lest Hezekiah mislead you by saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim? Have they delivered Samaria out of my hand? Who among all the gods of these lands have delivered their lands out of my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem out of my hand? But they were silent and answered him not a word, for the king's command was, do not answer him. Then Eliakim the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn, and told him the words of the Rabshakeh. As soon as King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes, and covered himself with sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the household, and Shebna the secretary, and the senior priests, covered with sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos. And they said to him, thus says Hezekiah, this day is a day of distress, of rebuke, and of disgrace. Children have come to the point of birth, and there is no strength to bring them forth. It may be that the Lord your God will hear the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to mock the living God, and will rebuke the words that the Lord your God has heard. Therefore, lift up your prayer for the remnant that is left. When the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, Isaiah said to them, say to your master, thus says the Lord, do not be afraid because of the words that you have heard, with which the young men of the king of Assyria have reviled me. Behold, I will put a spirit in him, so that he shall hear a rumour and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. The Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria fighting against Libnah, for he had heard that the king had left Lachish. Now the king heard concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush. And he had set out to fight against you, and when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, Thus shall you speak to Hezekiah, king of Judah. Do not let your God, in whom you trust, deceive you by promising that Jerusalem will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all lands, devoting them to destruction. And shall you be delivered? Have the gods of the nations delivered them, the nations that my fathers destroyed, Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and the people of Eden, who are in Telassar? Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, the king of the city of Sepharvaim, the king of Hena, or the king of Eva? Hezekiah received the letter from the hand of the messengers and read it. And Hezekiah went up to the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, O Lord of hosts, God of Israel, enthroned above the cherubim. You are the God, you alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Incline your ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. And hear all the words of Sennacherib, which he has sent to mock the living God. Truly, O Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste all the nations of their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire. For there were no gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they were destroyed. So now, O Lord our God, save us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone are the Lord. Then Isaiah the son of Amos sent to Hezekiah, saying, Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because you have prayed to me concerning Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning him. She despises you, she scorns you, the virgin daughter of Zion. She wags her head behind you, the daughter of Jerusalem. Whom have you mocked and reviled? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your eyes to the heights? Against the Holy One of Israel. By your servants you have mocked the Lord, and you have said, With my many chariots I have gone up the heights of the mountains to the far recesses of Lebanon, to cut down its tallest cedars, its choicest cypresses, to come to its remotest height, its most fruitful forests. I dug wells and drank waters to dry up with the sole of my foot all the streams of Egypt. Have you not heard that I determined it long ago? I planned from days of old what now I bring to pass, that you should make fortified cities crash into heaps of ruins, while their inhabitants, shorn of strength, are dismayed and confounded, and have become like plants of the field and like tender grass, like grass on the housetops, blighted before it is grown. I know you're sitting down, and you're going out, and you're coming in, and you're raging against me. Because you have raged against me, and your complacency has come to my ears, I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will turn you back on the way by which you came. And this shall be the sign for you. This year you shall eat what grows of itself, and in the second year what springs from that. Then in the third year sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit, and the surviving remnant of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go a remnant, and out of Mount Zion a band of survivors. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Therefore thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city, or shoot an arrow there, or come before it with a shield, or cast up a siege mound against it. By the way that he came, by the same he shall return, and he shall not come into this city, declares the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it, for my own sake and for the sake of my servant David. And the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when people arose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies. Then Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and returned home and lived at Nineveh. And as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch, his god, Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, struck him down with the sword. And after they escaped into the land of Ararat, Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his place. Amen. Let me pray before Andrew comes up. Dr. Andrew Matthews is his full title, but let me pray for him as he comes to bring us his word. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for your word that is living and active. Thank you that you always provide for us and you prepare and equip people to preach your word. And this morning, we thank you for bringing Andrew and his family to us here, all the way from Finley. We ask that you would open our hearts, that you would also use Andrew in a powerful way, that the power of the Spirit would be working through him and working in our hearts to convict us, to point us to Jesus, to point us to faith in you. Lord, fill us with joy for hearing your word this morning, and may the message echo and ring in our hearts for the rest of, not only today, but the rest of the week and our lives as well. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Stephen, for doing that long reading. And it is over 2 chapters, but that's the whole story, right? You don't want to stop halfway through the story, like leaving a movie before it was done. I want to also thank Pastor Glenn and his wife Nalini for being a good friend to my family, my son Gaius, who is attending here as he goes to Scott's. Thank you for the honor of being able to preach in this pulpit. And I look forward also hearing Pastor Glenn in the future as he brings God's word. So if you'll have your Bibles open up to 36, as it was read off of the PowerPoint screen, as we open up this wonderful account of God's word. The Christian life is a holy war. For the duration of your life, you're going to be in a constant battle. What kind of battle is it? It is a battle to keep your faith. And when you look at the story, the Bible itself, it's a Bible. If you look at the Bible, there's so many stories about warfare. I mean, particularly the Old Testament, all these battles, scenes that we've seen. But the battle of the Christian life is not going to be fought on the battlefields. It's not going to be fought with guns and swords. It is a battle that is fought within your heart and mind. It is a battle to keep your faith. And the weapons that are most used often are those of words. Words are the weapons that come at you, but it is God's word in which you fight against the evil one. So as you look at this passage on this invasion by the king of Assyria into Judah and this besieging of Jerusalem, we're going to look at such a holy war. And it's one of the more significant conflicts in the scriptures. In fact, it's listed in 3 different places. It's here in Isaiah 36 and 37. It's in 2 Kings 18 and 19. And there's an abridged version of it in 2 Chronicles chapter 32. So it is a significant battle, but it is a battle which is about faith. It is a battle about keeping the faith. The very battle which you are engaged in for the rest of your life. As we look at these 2 chapters, I'm going to break it up into 3 sections. Quite simply that. We're going to first look at the words of the Assyrians. Secondly, we're going to look at the words of Hezekiah. And thirdly, we're going to look at the words of the Lord. Because this is all about the weapons of our warfare, which are words. Beginning in chapter 36, we're going to be looking at the words of the Assyrians, and we're going to see that there is a verbal assault. It is a verbal assault of a demonic dialogue. Because when you look at this whole chapter, this whole story, there's very little actual conflict or battle. There's 58 verses over this whole 2 chapters, and only 5 of them contain actual actions or battles. The other 53 is simply dialogue. men speaking to one another. So if this was a war movie, and it was 2 hours long, and my kids were watching it with me, they would say, "Daddy, this is a war movie. All they seem to be doing is talking." I said, "Yeah, you got to get to the end. There's about 5 minutes of an actual battle scene. It's a whole bunch of words and talking." But initially, we look at the words of the Assyrians, and we see a verbal assault against the nation of Israel, against Hezekiah, which is really a demonic dialogue. And it begins with a meeting, and it's a very dangerous meeting in that. So the Assyrians bring 3 of their men, the Rabshakeh, the Tartan, and the Rabsarsas, and then the Judeans bring 3 of their men, Eliakim, Shebna, and Joah. And they're going to have a kind of little peace meeting. They're going to have a little talk. They're going to have a little dialogue to see how things are going to turn out. And be careful about dialogues and discussions. In fact, some of the most dangerous events in all of Scripture are simply dialogues, discussions. The most dangerous events, the most satanic conflict just occurs in conversations. Think about Jesus as he meets with the Pilate, talking to him, and Jesus could get off, but he just denied himself. Jesus in front of the Sanhedrin as they're questioning about who he is. Jesus as he's in the wilderness talking with the devil. Moses as he talks with Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." And then you have that little discussion in the Garden of Eden between Satan and Eve. Beware of dangerous discussions, because it's in the midst of these discussions, this dialogue, in which the real battle is occurring. Because it's a battle of words, but it is a battle of truth. So be careful the next time you just have that coffee shop meeting. Who knows what occurs in that meeting? So they come together for this meeting. And it's supposedly a peace meeting, but really the Rabshakeh and the Assyrians, they have only one purpose in this meeting, and that is to force a surrender of the Israelites. And to begin the discussion, and it's a dialogue, but it's really a monologue, because the Rabshakeh is doing all the talking, and the Judeans just sit and listen. And he begins with what I call twisted truths. And all of these truths that he's going to throw at Eliakim and Hezekiah that are used to intimidate, to get them to surrender. And they're twisted truths because a lot of them actually are true. And truth, when Satan has truth, that's a very dangerous weapon in his hand. And the first thing he mentions is that, well, Hezekiah, you're weak. Look at you. You're nothing. You think you're going to be able to save these people? Hey, look at your army. Tell you what, I will give you about 2,000 horses if you actually could put riders on them. You're weak. How do you think you're going to go up against me? Well, he's actually true. And God's servants, we generally are weak. Own it, okay? As a Christian, you are weak. And when you get into the trials of life, guess what? You're weak. Just confess that. And if Satan throws it at you, say, so what? I am weak. My army is weak. And then he throws another truth at him. It says, are you relying upon Egypt? You can't rely upon him. He's just a bruised reed. He won't be able to save you. You won't have any other help out there. Well, there's another truth. Don't rely upon Egypt. The Israelites never should go to Egypt for help. And so oftentimes in life, Satan will say to you, where are you going to get your help? Who's out there to help you? You're going to run to the world for help? And you say, no, because the world can't help me. I'm not going to run to the world to get help. And then he mentions, well, what about all these idols? See, I'm going to come in and I'm going to destroy you guys just the same way I destroyed all those other pagan nations. And he mentions about 8 or 9 of them. And he says, did any of their gods Were they able to defeat me and my great army? Once again, a truth. Well, of course, their idols are impotent. They don't do anything. They have hands, but they don't move. They have mouths, but they don't speak. The gods of the nations are nothing. Of course, they couldn't defeat you. Once again, an irrelevant truth. And then he mentions the reforming of religion, and he says, well, you're trusting in the Lord. Well, didn't Hezekiah go up in the high places and remove all those idols, and he tore down that bronze snake thingy that you guys were worshiping, and he says you got to worship now in Jerusalem, and clearly your religion is flawed. And clearly you've made some big mistakes. And why are you going to trust in this faith and religion if you've messed up so much and you need so much reform? The world says that about Christianity. Oftentimes the Christian church kind of drifts away from our truths, drifts from biblical doctrine, drifts from our confessions, and we fall into error. We start adopting bad practices, and all of a sudden now we're having to fix our own house. And what does the world do once we're fixing it? Look, you've got mistakes. Look at all the errors you have. And right now we're having to, in a sense, address issues of slavery. And in the past, and racism and things like that, where the Christian church did mess up. But the fact that we're reforming ourselves, getting back to the Bible and getting back to our confessions, doesn't negate the very truth that we stand for. And then lastly, the king twists the truth regarding misinterpreting the providence of God. And the Rapsakeh says, well, I have come in and destroyed all these nations. I've swooped into Judea. And I have done that with the Lord's help because the Lord said I was going to go in here and judge all these nations and defeat them all. And guess what? He's right. Because if you go back into Isaiah 7 and Isaiah 8, the prophet Isaiah spoke for the Lord and said, guess what? The Lord is going to sweep it, or the Assyrians are going to sweep in here and be my hand of chastisement and judgment against the Syrians, against the pagans, against the Sumerians, that's northern Israel. And in fact, the king of Assyria is going to swoop all the way into Judea, take over all of Judea, and surround Jerusalem. And like a flood river, is going to go all the way up to the neck of Jerusalem. But you notice it only goes to the neck. It doesn't go all the way over Jerusalem. And that he's right. The Assyrians are a tool and a weapon of God's judgment, chastising pagan nations, chastising northern Israel for their apostasy, and chastising Judah for its falling away. So he's right. But he misinterprets, ultimately, why he's doing that. Because the Assyrians thought it was all of their strength doing it. And the Assyrians thought that they weren't going in there saying, you know what? Guys, this is just tough love. We just want to correct you and teach you and train you so you can get back onto, pure worship of the Lord. No, they're going in there to destroy. Their intent and purpose is to exalt themselves, afflict and oppress the people of faith. But God is then, after using the Assyrians, going to destroy them and not let the Assyrians take over Jerusalem. He misinterprets God's will. So he gives twisted truth, and he also gives a devil's deal. It's sort of a deal that's too good to pass up. So he says in verses 16 to 18, now he's speaking to all the people. He says, don't listen to Hezekiah. Tell you what, if you surrender, guess what? You're going to have, I'm going to give you some short-term prosperity. You're going to get to have your own vine and your own cistern and your own fig tree for a little while. And then later, guess what? I'm going to take you to another place And it's going to be just as good as Israel. It's going to be a land of honey and milk and gold and all of these things, just like Israel. A promise of good. And the language that he uses mimics oftentimes the prophetic language and the Old Testament language of God's promises to the people of Israel if they would trust in him. So there's a promise of good, a temptation that comes from them. And how oftentimes Satan tempts you in your life to say that if you turn your back on the Lord and go in this other direction, you're going to get something good. Every temptation in your life is Satan offering you a deceitful promise of good, that somehow you will be better off. You know, the temptation of adultery. Be unfaithful to your wife. See this other woman? She is just as good as your wife, and you'll be happier with this woman. So if you will leave her, you will get something good, something better with this other woman. So the devil sends out his temptations. But it's loaded. He says, take this offer, otherwise I'm going to destroy you. You will be eating and drinking your own bodily fluids. But now he gets to the last thing. Where now he's going to assail their faith. And this is the crux of the attack. This is what it all centers down to in this. It is a bold-faced attack upon their faith. Do not trust in the Lord. This is the essence of it all. He begins, who are you trusting in? Where is your trust? Don't listen to Hezekiah. Don't listen to God, who says to trust in them. A direct, immediate assault. Satan will oftentimes come with twisted truth and casting doubt and trying to finagle you into disobedience. But then you have the bold-faced lie. As the devil said to Eve, you will not surely die. He says here, do not trust in the Lord. And he says, the Lord cannot deliver you. This is the essence of the faith. Can and will God deliver you in your trial? And the fiery darts of the evil one, as we hear in Ephesians chapter 6, are aimed at your heart and your faith. And you have to put up the shield of faith to stop that. Because your response is, the Lord can deliver me. The Lord will deliver me. And you must continue to trust. And the shield of faith goes up that says, I will continue to have faith in God's faithfulness towards me. The essence of your relationship is faith in God's faithfulness. Your love and trust in God's truthfulness and love towards you. And Satan seeks to destroy you by destroying that faith, to get you to no longer believe in the Lord. To say that all these situations that you're in, all these trials and everything that is against you, all of that is supposed to convince you that the Lord cannot deliver you. The big lie. And is by which you stand or fall is, will and can the Lord deliver you. So that is the verbal assault of these demonic representatives. But what is Hezekiah's response? What does he say? So we look at the next section. At the end of everything the Assyrians say, we see the wise response of the faithful king. And all of his responses are faithful and good. They truly are wise responses. This would be one section of Scripture where you can imitate the faithfulness of God's servants and learn lessons from them. And we'll notice 5 different things his response is. First of all, he resists the Assyrians. He doesn't surrender or give in to them. And initially he did this by no longer paying tribute to the Assyrians. And he's correcting his dad's mistake. Remember his father, King Ahaz, because he was afraid of the Sumerians and the Syrians coming in. He said, "Tell you what, I'm going to hire the Assyrians, and the Assyrians will fight for me against those 2 other armies, and everything will be fine." And then the prophet Isaiah said, "No, don't do that. That's not going to work out well. Because those Assyrians are going to come in here, and they're actually going to defeat them, but they're also going to defeat you." And Hezekiah, because he was a good king, says, "I'm no longer going to pay for the Assyrians." He's trying to remedy the mistake that his dad did. So instead of paying tribute and giving into them, he says he's actually going to resist them, to not surrender. And this is the first thing you do, is when you're attacked in your faith, resist that. Book of James, resist the devil, he will flee from you. 1 Peter, your adversary, the devil, is like a roaring lion. Resist him, firm in the faith. And the Apostle Paul, put on the whole armor of God and take your stand. Stand. Stand against the attacks of the evil one. You got to put up some resistance in the armed strength of God. The second thing he does is he stays silent. Verse 21 of chapter 36, after all these words of the Rabshakeh. "But they were silent, and they answered him not a word, for the king's command was, do not answer him." There's some good advice. You don't argue. You don't try to outwit Satan. When Jesus is in the wilderness, he's not in this long dialogue with Satan. What does he do? He quotes Scripture back to him. Eve never should have got in that discussion with Satan. You stay silent. It is not worthy to get into the dialogue. Because these enemies do not want to come to resolution. The enemy wants to destroy them. Third thing, he seeks counsel. He goes immediately to Isaiah and says, "Have you heard all of this, what this Rabshakeh has said? Maybe the Lord will hear this and respond and defend us." He goes to the prophet Isaiah. He seeks godly counsel. When you're in trouble, when your faith is failing, who do you talk to? Please, talk to someone that is godly, who has faith. Whether it's your parents. Talk to your pastor. Talk to Nalini. Talk to someone who you can trust, who will seek the Lord through it. Fourthly, he humbles himself. Both the 3 Hebrew men and Hezekiah, what do after all this conversation? They tear their clothes. They wear sackcloth. And Hezekiah says, "This is a day of distress and rebuke and disgrace. Children have come to the point of birth. There's no strength." In other words, absolutely contrite. Now, this wasn't affected. It wasn't like he goes, "You know what? In a situation like this, I think I need to tear my clothes." And it's a formula. If I tear my clothes, I got to put on the sackcloth, and then now the Lord will see that. Let's go through all the motions. No, this would be natural and automatic. When you've got nothing, when you're in such immediate distress, the humility is just there. Because the pain and the disgrace and the pain is there. You can't help but be humbled before the Lord. And the last and the most important thing is that he prays. 2 times it says he went into the house of the Lord and prayed. Now, a little confession here. I think those of us who believe in the sovereignty of God, that He's in control of all things, that He's ordained and decreed all things in all existence, everything plays out in accordance to His will. Some of us who are Calvinists, we have a hard time figuring out prayer. Like, how does it all fit into God's will? And are we changing anything? And we struggle with prayer. But Hezekiah prays. And you'll notice in God's response in chapter 37, verse 22, he says, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because you have prayed to me. Because you have prayed to me, I'm going to answer." Prayer is necessary. It is part of the unfolding of God's purposes. It is because you're humble, it is because you're weak, because there is no other salvation outside of the Lord, you must pray. With groanings that words cannot express. You can't help but pray because you are pleading for the Lord's help. So he goes into the house of the Lord. He is going to pray. He's going to beseech the Lord, supplications of God's help. Because only God can save in the situation. He can't save himself. No one can save except for the Lord. Prayer is a necessity. And prayer is our way, and it's an acknowledgement for the world and for the church that God is going to be the one who does all the good stuff. God is going to be the one that comes in and saves the situation so that the glory and the credit goes to God because He answers your prayer. So he prays. And he takes the letter that Sennacherib had written. And he's going to cast it before the Lord. He's going to transfer it to God. He's going to bring that letter. So he brings the letter in front of the altar, and it's like he spread it and he read it. He says, "Here's what he said. You take over from now, God. I'm transferring responsibility on to you." And in his prayer, he affirms God's sovereignty. Here's this great king with this huge army. He says, "No, you're the one enthroned in the heavens. You're the one that sits above the cherubim. You are the maker and the creator of the earth. All the kingdoms of the world are in your hand. You are the great king, not Assyrians." And he appeals to his sovereignty, or he affirms God's sovereignty, and he appeals to God's glory. He says, "Can you believe this guy that is mocking you? How dare he mock you, the living God in control of all things, saying that you can't save or you won't save? This reviling of you, it is offensive before you." So he appeals to God's desire for his glory and the blaspheming of his name. He says, "This cannot stand." So Hezekiah gets something about God's personality, is that he demands glory, and he will not give his glory unto another. And then lastly, he pleads for God's help. Verse 20 of 37. "So now, O Lord our God, save us from his hand." I like the 2 Kings version of it. It says, "Oh now, O Lord God, save us, please." I read that like, oh, he said please. The magic word, But it's just that. Do you hear the begging, the pleading? "Oh Lord, please save us. We are in desperate straits. Save us by your hand so that you can be known. Your glory can be known." There is the supplication, the humble cry of salvation. The Lord doesn't take pleasure in the strength of a man or in the size of his army, but the Lord takes pleasure in those who hope in his mercy. God delights in your weaknesses, and God delights in your trust and hope in him. It makes him happy. So we see the wise response of the king, but then we lastly are going to see God's answer. And it's an aggressive answer. It's the aggressive answer of the mocked God. And just as all these words are coming at him, God has words for them, and they're fighting words. And you see them in verses 21 through 35. He says, basically, you've been mocking me, you've been mocking Israel, but guess what? Zion, that's Israel, Judah, they're going to scorn you now. She's going to be wagging her head or tongue at you, O Assyria. Because guess what? You have mocked me. You're mocking Hezekiah, you're mocking the Assyrians, but you have been mocking me. You've been reviling me. How dare you make fun of me? The offense of that. In our day and age, we've come out of kind of a Christian nations now, become post-Christian. Have you noticed the tone and the tenor of the secularists in our day, the atheists in our day, how aggressive they are at attacking Christianity and attacking our faith? It used to be there was politeness, there was tolerance. Now it's become very aggressive. I would give a warning to them, be careful how you talk about our God and our faith. Don't make him angry. Because the mocked God is now going to respond with a judgment against him. And he goes on and he challenged the Assyrian king and Sennacherib, and he says, you've been boasting against me how strong you are, but guess what? I did it. All of these countries that you defeated, all these pagan gods that were helpless, guess what? It was my strength behind your army. It is my sovereign control of things that gave you all these victories. In Isaiah chapter 10, the Lord rebukes Sennacherib, and he says, how dare the axe boast against the hand that wields it? You're just a tool. You're just my tool. You're nothing. I'm the one that helps you. And then he says to him, you're doomed. You're not going to be able to take Jerusalem. You're not even going to shoot an arrow over it. You're going to be fleeing back home. You will be destroyed, and you will be killed in your hometown. And the Assyrians will ultimately then be destroyed by the Babylonians. So he gives his fighting words back to him, and then he gives the faithful deeds. Verse 36 to 38. And like I said, the battle here is a battle of words. You notice how many of the battles in the Bible which God fights, you know how quick they're over? It's not much of a battle when God's fighting. So in one night, the angel of the Lord comes and slaughters 185,000 of the Assyrians, and then in defeat, they flee back to Nineveh. The Judeans never lifted a sword. They never once fought against them, because the battle is the Lord's. A swift and easy battle, as God is doing the fighting. And then the ultimate humiliation. The great king, who was boasting of his might, goes back into his temple of his god, Nisroch, and he is slaughtered while he worships his pagan god, killed by his own sons. So you see a weak king delivered by a mighty Lord, and a great king that is slaughtered before an impotent idol. The ultimate ironic judgment of human weakness and God's strength. So the battle is over in an instant. This battle. But your battle of faith lasts your whole life. It is the fight of your life. But as Pastor Glenn has said, the battle has been won already by Christ. That Christ preserves you and keeps you and holds you for the great day when you will go to heaven or he comes back. You are held by the Holy Spirit. Christ is held on to you and nothing can take you out of his hands. And the one that has endured all demonic and satanic attack, endured every trial of this world, who understands all of your weaknesses, who has gone into death and been raised again, your victory is found in him. You will endure this battle. But as the Apostle Paul said, armor yourself and take your stand. Keep your faith. And may you get to the end of your life and can say with the Apostle Paul, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this word. We do pray, O Lord, that you will use this word to spur us on, to comfort us, to encourage us, to grant us wisdom. And Lord, may we, in the evil day that we all face, may we be able to take our stand, resist the devil.